Hi and welcome to Sparkle Chart.
Hi everyone, today I'm going to be decorating the cover of this beautiful Jane Davenport mixed media journal, and it's got a gorgeous canvas cover so I can do lots of cool things on it and beautiful thick paper inside. So the friend that I'm sending this to hopefully will be able to put many journal pages and beautiful artworks in here. So let me get started. Now I'm going to start by adding a base layer, and I'm going to use Jane Davenport's Gesso and some Lindy's Stamp Gang Magicals. Now when I mix these with the Gesso, I'll get a really pale pastel version of the actual colour, so to make a wonderful base layer that I can then add to afterwards and make stronger, brighter colours. So the first thing I'm going to do is just move this across the surface, making sure to get the spine and the little bits along the edges. And then as you start working on the Gesso, just add a tiny little bit of some of the shaker colours. And by tiny I mean really tiny, because this stuff goes a long way. And then just work it in. So that first one was Octoberfest Orange. This next one is Magnolia Magenta Gold, which is really pretty. And just add more Gesso as you go, as you need to. Now just so that I get a nice blend of colour, I'm going to add some Umpapa Pink, a little Time Travel Teal, just a really small bit, and some Polka Purple. Hello Safi. So the aim of this first layer is just to get some colour on the journal. It's not really to make any particular pattern or anything of any sort. It's just to add a little colour to the Gesso. And all you really need to do is make sure all of the journal cover has a little colour on it. And of course you can always add to that later. Now while it's still a little bit wet, I'm going to splatter it with some Lindy's sprays. I'm starting with Tiffany's Blue. And this is just going to add a few bits of colour and a little bit of pattern to the background so it's not quite so flat. I've got Time Travel Teal. Sorry, I've got Teapot Purple. Now if you don't want these to mix, you can very easily dry between sprays, but for me I don't really mind if they kind of get in there together. I'm going to add a little Grabber Guy Gold, not for the colour but more so that there's some pops of gold sort of magic happening in the background. Now I probably won't add as much of this one, maybe, I don't know, we'll see how I feel. Cowabunga Copper, again, just for those pops in the background, because by the time I'm finished with this, the splatters won't really be so noticeable, but every now and then you'll get a little hit of the shimmer. And if you've got sort of stuff going on in the background, it makes whatever I do over the top look a bit more interesting. Now I've got Tibetan Poppy Teal, and this is seriously strong. So maybe just a hint of this. Let's see how I go with that. And I'm going to finish up with French Lilac Violet. Now I'm also going to add a few larger spots with this purple. And make sure I've got some towards the sides and the bottoms. And then I have to just be patient, wait for this to dry. So I've just got some of the Grabber Guy Gold, and I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of spray, just for some variety in the patterns. Don't want to add too much here. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the TiffanyLou Blue. Again, just for a little variety, to make sure that it's not all super the same. And a little of the Teapot Purple. Just so that doesn't take over completely, I'm just going to add a little water and dry that off. Now the layers I do next might end up covering some of this, or all of it, or most of it, or bits of it. But no matter what I add now, whatever's peeking through will be beautiful and colourful and interesting and just a little bit sparkly and shimmery. Now I am going to let this dry overnight so it is completely free of as much moisture as possible before I continue, and then I'm going to give it a coat of workable matte fixative before I go on, just to make sure everything stays in place and I don't spread the sparkles around from the magicals. So at this point the workable fixative is dry and I'm just playing with some ideas for the cover. So I have one of the Jane Davenport collage sheets and I'm just going to cut this into pieces and then I can figure out which bits I'd like to use. So I think what I'm going to do is add some of these larger elements across the cover. Now of course I'm going to need to layer some of these elements so that I get a unique cover. I don't just want to stick and glue. I need to make this beautiful. So I think where I'm heading is this face across the front cover with the hair going onto the spine, so it gives it a little bit of difference here. Okay, so I'm going to use some golden high flow acrylics here, and I've got Pthalo green, I've got nickel azo gold, and I've got Dioxazine purple. And I may or may not add some of the Jane Davenport acrylic paint in the mauvey colour, don't know if it's actually got a name, and perhaps a little bit of the golden iridescent bright gold. See how I feel. Now I'm going to add these as a dot and then spritz them with water. I kind of love how it's making these almost dandelion kind of looking shapes there. It's pretty cool. So I've got a little splodge here of that beautiful gold. And I'm just looking for a way. Okay, so I have a little blending tool here. It's not usually what it's used for, but this might just work. Because I want to add a really soft sort of element of this gold in. And because these other things are still wet, I can sort of pick up and move stuff around a bit. It's pretty cool. So I can apply it thickly, or I can blend it out with the little tool. Make it a soft sheen, or a really bold and vibrant colour. So this is something I'm rather liking here. I'm going to mix a bit of that in with the nickel azo gold, so it gets both the colour and the metallic. And of course, if the colour's too strong, I can just sponge it off. Okay, that background's now got a bit of punch to it. That's a really good start. I'm going to like this. Okay, now that the fluid acrylic is dry, it's time to add a little bit of the collage paper. And I'm just going to cut this up and use it where I can. Now the collage paper has sort of like a backing layer which you need to peel off as you go, so I'll be sure to do that. And I'm also going to layer it a little because I don't want it to be just sort of this plain sort of, you know, stuck down nothing. I want it to be interesting and cool and something pretty. And always keeping in mind that this will be sitting across the front here, so I don't want to waste anything that's going to look amazing. Now to glue this down, I'll be using some matte medium, and I'll just again use the Jane Davenport version. You can use anything, and I'm just going to do this very slowly, one at a time. So peel the backing layer off and then glue down one of the smaller elements. I've just got a little brush here. Just going to make sure that it's spread out nicely. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to make sure that I had a sealant on there, because as you brush the matte medium over, it can move some of the colours. I don't know if you could see it, but I also brushed a little matte medium onto the edges here so that I can secure the edge of the collage paper to the journal. Now there's a little bit here that didn't have some on there, so I'm just going to add it there. So it's made really good contact. Now I don't know if you can see that, but you can see some of the coloured elements behind the piece right here, and anything that's white goes clear when you add the matte medium, so you get this beautiful almost watercolour effect from the collage paper being over the top. So I'm just going to do that same process with each of the other pieces. So peel the backing off, add a little matte medium and stick it down, and then once that's dry I'll add a little bit more over the top just for some added strength, because it is still quite thin paper after all, and you don't want it to rip, tear or be damaged as you're putting any other layers over the top. Now make sure that you add the matte medium and seal the edges, as well as making sure it's glued down. Okay, now to let the matte medium dry. Now, even just like this, between the initial coats of paint and that beautiful translucent collage paper I've just added, you've got an almost watercolour-like background, and it's a great base for whatever you're planning to put on top of it. In this case, it's going to be stunning when we finish, I promise. Now, I just have to leave this to dry. One of the tricks to keeping those colours bright and clear is letting them dry between and a few layers of workable fixatives so that they don't get reactivated as you go over the top. A few little hints of metallic, and you've got one hell of a background on the way. Now the next step is probably the most labour intensive of the process, except for the final sort of finishing off. So you need to add enough components, enough interest, enough variety to the background to make sure that whatever you do on top of it, everything else that it's revealed looks interesting. Now, even though some of this will be covered, and yes, I did say that with the previous step, but that's just kind of what happens when you're layering with mixed media. Some things are covered, some things are revealed, some things are left to stand out. So I'm going to start by adding some archival ink, and I'm using this because it's waterproof and I know it won't reactivate with the paint or anything else I put on top later. So I'm going to use Garden Patina, Deep Purple and Cobalt, because these are the colours that I already have in my background. Now I could have used ochre, but I thought that might fade sort of into nothing, so I've gone with some of the darker colours. Now you can do what I'm doing and ink up your stamp on a stamping block and apply it that way, or you can just leave it off the block and press it on with your fingers. Now I'm planning on doing both, because that way you'll get some beautiful precise images and some that are a little bit wonky and a little bit distressed looking, and I just kind of like the variety that you can get with that. Now the beauty of archival ink is that you don't need to leave it to dry, and I can go straight over the top and start with my stenciling. Now again, I'm going to stick to the same kind of colours, turquoise and purple, and this time I'm going to use Art Alchemy Impasto paint. This is kind of a thick, squidgy paint. It's a bit thicker than normal. And this is Jade, and I'm also going to use a little of the purpley lilac colour from Jane Davenport, but mix that in with some more Art Alchemy metallics, so Mermaid Teal, Light Patina and Crocus Fields. And the mix of the metallic and flat paint will give me a really nice, interesting effect to my finished journal cover. I'll have a few bits of shimmer, some of that beautiful Lindy's peeking through from underneath, some of the golden acrylic gold paint that I used, that iridescent bright gold, along with some stamping and some acrylic and some beautiful satiny finish paints. So the combination of those things will make this a lot more interesting than just a plain one colour or one particular kind of paint. So I'll get that beautiful variety that really makes the backgrounds pop. Now it's time to add my little face, and again I'm just going to use the matte medium for that, and I will try and make sure that it sits so that some of it is over the spine, just to make it that little bit more interesting. So I'm going to need bucket loads of matte medium for this, so I'm going to start at the bottom and then just work my way up. Now I know it's going to flow along here, so I'll just put a line of matte medium and then work out. Now I know I've got to have some go over the background here and some along the spine. So let me just start laying my image down. Now you need to be reasonably careful when you've got this wet collage paper, because it can very easily tear. So you need to be really, really sure that you've got a nice, good layer of the matte medium on the background, so that you don't need to try and lift it up and add any more, because it's very difficult to do that without making a really big mess. Now you can see how this top layer is blending into those layers underneath. You can't see the edges of the collage paper, it's nicely glued down. And this is the danger zone, when you're trying to make sure you've got no bubbles and it's all nice and flat, but the collage paper has taken some of the moisture on from the matte medium. It's really easy to rip it, and try not to move it around too much. I mean, it doesn't matter, sometimes it doesn't matter how well you've, or how careful you've been, it lifts anyway. So just do the best you can. And again, you'll need to leave this to dry. Now it's time to start adding the finishing touches and final elements. So what I need to do is lighten the face on the girl here so it's more prominent, and maybe a bit of acrylic paint just to finish it off. But no matter what I'm using, I'm going to be applying it with a water brush, so I have a little bit more control over the transparency, so I don't overdo it. And all I really need to be able to do this is a piece of paper towel, so I can keep the water brush clean. Now I'm going to start with the face. Now you can cover as much or as little of the underlying collage paper peeking through as you like, just by adding more layers or diluting with water. And that's what I'm going to do on her little body down here. I'm going to make this a little bit more translucent just by diluting with water, because I don't want to cover up all that awesome colour or texture underneath. And of course, if you feel like you've added too much paint, just dab with the paper towel. So that was the Jane Davenport Paint Over pen in Beach, and I'm just going to use the pen in Unicorn as well. And this is just the white. It's great for adding little highlights, or the whites of the eyes, and you can see just simply by doing that, it's really brought those eyes to life. Now, without taking anything away from the colours that were already underneath that, I've just changed the colour of the face enough so that it stands out a bit more against the background. So I've made the lips sort of a bit more rosy to match in with the purples and the colours in the background here. I've just highlighted the little eyes and added a little touch of skin tone to the face, just so it stands out a bit more. Now I might need to do another layer. We'll see how this stands up when I add colour to the rest. Add some paint to the hair, and make some sections, and I'm going to use some watercolor brush pens for this. I'm going to use the Ecoline pens here, a few paint pens, maybe even a few watercolors. Okay, just swap to something darker for some punch. So I'm going to go the Permanent Violet. I'm just going to flip this around because I'm going to add it along the top of the hair here. Okay, now that I've got that beautiful border, what I'm going to do is blend it out a little. So I'm going to get my brush wet and then just work on the edges. Try and work around the shapes that I've got. So I don't want to cover the circle, I just want to work around it and make this colour part of the design. Now the darker the paint underneath, the more colour I'll need to add. And of course you can use water to highlight some areas underneath. Now it's a little difficult to see while I'm working with the water, but I'm going to use this little bit of paper towel just to soften some areas and highlight the design behind. You don't want to lose everything that's back there. Now make sure to tilt it and have a look at how it's going. You can see that that's really helping add a bit more purple to the design and give me sort of like a delineation mark, a sort of a separation point. But I want it to be darker. Now, I don't like adding to one bit without adding a little something on the other side as well. So I'm just going to add a lighter layer down here in the hair at the bottom. And then just paint this out. So it sort of fades away as it gets to the top. I'm going to blend this in with some of the colours underneath, so it looks like it's part of the background rather than standing out. And then just dab at the edges. Making them a bit rougher just sort of makes it blend a little better. Now if it's still too dark, you can grab your water brush and just go and take some of that colour away or spread it around a bit more. I'm going to do both. Now now that this is dry, you can see that face is standing out a lot better. I'm just going to turn this around and carry that purple just around the rest of the hair. Always remembering to continue it around and make it slightly abstract so it becomes part of the design rather than something you've just whacked on top. Now this first layer you can have as dark or as light as you like, because you can always go back in afterwards and add darker colour. I'm still not sure if I need to do anything on the back. I'm actually pretty happy with the back as it is. It's just nice and soft and pretty. But I can always decide later. I want the front to be really dramatic, but I don't know if I want that to carry over to the back. I'd like a little bit of variation, I think. Might leave the front as the drama queen piece. Isn't that looking great? Just love the layering and the effects you get with the paint and the collage papers. It's turning out pretty. Alright, so I can see a few bits I'd like to make a little darker. Just because I really want this baby to pop. And then again in with a clean water brush, just to soften some of that. Now you've already got the colour layered underneath, so you don't need to take too much off, because now it won't be quite so stark. It's got something under there to sort of keep it, I don't know, looking beautiful. And you can see that's really adding some drama to that front cover here. Now, I don't know if I should add it down there as well. Kind of like that soft side and the darker side. Might just add a bit more down the bottom here. And that's how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to flip it over and add some of that colour in a few places just to help enhance some of the patterns, and that way I can add it to the back without actually going and doing anything different. And this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to sneak in a little of this colour on the back just by adding it to some of the patterns. And obviously I'm now going to have to let that dry. Now I'm going to add one last thing before I let this dry. And I've got some Daniel Smith Duochrome Hibiscus watercolour. And I'm going to add this because it's going to add a tiny little bit of shimmery pearlescent yumminess in colour that is going to complement what I already have. So I'm just going to dot this in and around and over the top of the beautiful paint that I've just laid down. Not all of it though, I might just do one side, just so each side has a bit of something different going for it. I like things that match, but not that look the same. I know it's weird. Now this has got a pink colour in its own right, so wherever I put it, it will add a little bit of a pink tint, as well as when it's dry, some shimmer. And I love the way that the shimmer sort of settles into the little ridges and valleys of the canvas and then the collage paper I've got on top as well. Yeah, that almost is criminal to waste. I might just flip this over and add a tiny bit to the back as well. Now don't force it, so just put the colour where you think it works, where you think the addition of it might actually fill in a gap or make it look better. If it doesn't need it, don't add it. See, I've got a few areas here that have already got a pink tinge, so that's where I'm going to add this, and then I'm just going to leave the rest as is. I think that might be all that's needed. And the worst part, waiting for it to dry. Now, as my final purple element, I'm going to add some of the Crocus Fields, and I already have some of this in the background, but I'm just going to add a little bit more over the top, again with that water brush, and just sort of as a stronger colour this time. So my friend really likes purple. I'd like to make sure I have this purple enough. I don't want to ruin it, but I want to make sure the purple stands out. And that's enough, I don't want to go overboard. I'm just going to dab at this little piece here, just to make sure there's still some variation in it. And now I have to let that dry. Now that everything's dry, it's time to add the finishing touches. So we've got this glorious colour from the watercolour, the background, the hair, adding a little bit of darkness in here. And when you open it up, it matches, but it's distinctly front and back. So I'm now going to use some of the Jane Davenport Warm Seas Glitz, how do I say this? Glitz Sea markers to add a few embellishments. And I've mixed up some gorgeous golden acrylic paint in here with a little bit of airbrush medium, and that way I can write with it. Usually I use black, but the gold I think will look nice on here. So I'm just going to open this out one final time and use my markers to add some embellishments. I absolutely love picking out the edges of some of the patterns in Sparkle, because then as you move the cover you get these beautiful little extra bits and pieces. Alright, I think that's enough of the pink. Now onto the gold. Now with the gold, you can go as heavy or as light as you'd like. You can go over some of the pink if you want to. You can pick out some of the patterns that are already in there. It's completely up to you. I love the fact that you can sort of pretty much do almost anything you like at this point, because you've already got that beautiful base, and whatever you do just enhances that. Oh, I'm so close to being finished. So those little dots of white just add a nice foil for all that colour. And I've just got one thing left to do. And this is the most scary bit, because this is where I can really muck it up or make it. Now this next step is scary because I'm adding that golden acrylic gold paint with some airbrush medium in there. And it can go very wrong very quickly, but just keep a baby wipe next to you and you can always wipe it off. So I've just added a tiny little bit on this side here. And once this is dry, which might take a few hours, it'll just beautifully pick out, almost like gutta on silk painting, just that little design on the front there. I just have to let this dry, and then I'm going to add 3 coats of Gloss Varnish to seal the cover, and it'll be finished. And that is the end of my transparent 10-layered mixed media cover. Now I hope you've enjoyed this slightly longer video to show you all those gorgeous steps in a little bit more detail so that you can go and make something like this for yourself. I'm hoping my beautiful swap partner really enjoys this and that it's purple enough. I know it's not totally purple, but I'm hoping the purple pops and that she can create many beautiful journal pages within the pages of this book, made with love and I hope a little inspiration flying across the seas. Bye.